Hi, and welcome back to Plugged In, the Odgers Berndtson gaming series where we glean insights from industry leaders and innovators. I'm Kathryn Spetch. I sit in our global gaming practice here at Odgers Exec Search, and today I am thrilled to be joined by Curve Games CEO John Clark. Really quick intro to John, although very likely not needed because I am yet to be convinced that there's anyone he doesn't know in the industry. But anyway, John is leading Curve on part 2 of its journey. So from building a stellar leadership team around him, which I'm very pleased to have played a part in, to defining a new vision, a rebrand, launching the Ascent, partnering with some fantastic new dev studios, he is doing it with great success. So let's jump straight in with my first question for John today, which is, what is the biggest challenge facing the industry in your opinion?
Firstly, Kathryn, thank you very much for such a warm welcome and a warm introduction. Very kind of you. I think if I think about the biggest challenge, I think about my role at Curve, which has been sort of for 18 months as CEO as an independent publisher. And that followed, a stint at Tencent and 13 years at Sega Europe, and a sort of a different feel to a business, sort of, bigger budgets, bigger studios, bigger franchises. But there are some things that are consistent. And when we look at the games and the publisher and the developers that we work with, the thing that is consistent is that we're a creatively driven industry. Yeah. It's our role as an independent publisher to go out there and look for some of the best independent games, and a lot of them are unique, original, brand new games that we take a risk on. Now, creativity and creative content from developers is something that we look for, but ultimately, whether or not we like to admit it, we are a commercially underpinned business, so everything has to stack up because we invest time, resource into that, and we really, it's a portfolio business, but we like to back a broad portfolio of title, and hopefully we'll get some winners out of that. We're bullish about the industry. It feels quiet at the moment. It feels less than vibrant, but we are bullish about it. We expect the industry to go through $200 billion globally in the year, and we see figures of 3 billion players worldwide. So we know that, especially after the last 2 years, that the games industry feels as if it's really making significant progress. Yeah. And throughout all of that, we negotiate formats, we negotiate geographies, we negotiate different business models that come up from time to time. They always require navigating, whether it's on the incumbent platforms that we would say Steam, PlayStation, Switch, Xbox, etc., or the new entrants. So whether it's Apple, still a new entrant as far as Curve is concerned, but Netflix and even Epic Games Store. All of these are a variety of platforms and ways of reaching consumers. So with all of that sort of preamble, I'd say the biggest challenge that I'm finding right now is almost like anything that puts a bigger gap or a bigger blocker in between the creative process and the ability to sell those games and publish those games globally. Okay. If I simplify our role, it's go out there and find great games. And the second part is go out there and sell great games globally. The bit that connects them in the middle is adding value to ensure that the games get made. And I would say there are two components within that. One is access to talent and skills and people. And you'll know yourself that the search for high quality people is really challenging. So I can't remember any time, certainly in my career, where development talent is being snapped up. And it doesn't matter if it's within video games or it doesn't matter whether it's in technology. No. It's a really, really competitive market, and that has an impact on us, and it also has a cost impact. Skills has a cost impact because it takes time to find people with skills, and in the meantime, sometimes you have to overpay within the production process to be able to get the job required. And then we look at operational costs. So if we think of all the platforms, and we'll talk about subscription models as well, if we take a game that we launch as a premium game on Steam, but then we want to, if we're looking for multiplayer, cross-play, integration with Epic, cross-play with Xbox, all of that requires technical integration, which comes at a cost. And we need the talent to be able to do that as well. If we want to support the future of our business, again, multiplayer, cross-play, it requires costs to be able to test it, to make sure it's functional. And all of these costs are rising. So when we look at the budgets that we operate to, the acquisition of talent, the support of people with the technical skills, and the costs to just get the game made.
Yeah.
And I don't necessarily mean from the cost to develop the game. I mean from the production, the QA, the localization, the marketing costs. All of those are some of the biggest challenges at the moment, because they put a bigger sort of blocker, if you like, or bigger steps in between the creative process and the commercial realities that we have to square away before we can successfully launch a game.
Yeah, no, really great point. And the tip, when you started by saying kind of the beginning, sourcing that great content through to the end, selling that great content. Clearly we've discussed a bit in between, but those two ends, which do you feel is most challenging in this market at the moment? Because it has shifted slightly. It's been a great 2 years for the industry, but as you said, things are slowing down slightly now, as we peter out into normality, whatever that is. So which of the two do you think are more challenging?
I would say equally so. It's easy for me to say that, but if we look at content, and if we look at development, quite clearly we see a lot of consolidation. So we see all of the bigger studios getting bought by bigger players, and you sort of think, what does that mean? What does that mean for the indies? What does that mean for the independent sector? And I don't necessarily see that as negative, because whenever we see this level of consolidation, we see a lot of investment and support into the industry. We see the industry get bigger. We see more eyeballs and more players come to the industry. Yeah. But we also see, wherever there's a studio that becomes a big studio, we do see, splinters of talent coming away from that to set up small independent studios. So what we see whenever we look at, as well as being based in London, in the last few weeks, I've visited Paris, I've visited Stockholm, I've visited, Copenhagen. These are cities that have big developers, and around the big developers, you get lots of independent developers, really, really top talent setting up. So the access to content, is always there. We're seeing, I think, since we opened up our revised inbound funnel process in November, we've had over 3,000 inbound pitches.
Wow.
So, how difficult that is to actually get through and consider what are the games that we think we could back is really, really challenging. So there's no, end of the supply of inbound pitches. So that's really, really challenging, just to get through them and filter them and find out who the strong developers are that we want to back. So there's content there, but it's challenging to filter. In terms of selling the games, if we think about it as globally publishing the games, well, we know who our platform partners are. That's fairly consistent. We have new entrants over the last couple of years that have been significant, but we know who our platform partners are. But it's the things that change in terms of curation and and discovery. And whereas, years ago you would run a big media campaign, now it's about, obviously it's about influencers and how we build communities. And, communities are, I was just sort of looking at the success that my colleagues from Sega have had with Sonic the Hedgehog, which has been incredible in re-engaging and rebuilding the community that was maybe, sort of trying to figure out where the, we all knew that Sonic had value, but it's incredible what that team have done in re-engaging the community and bringing content to it. We don't really have, an existing franchise or an existing fan base to build from. So we have to start from scratch. So that becomes, as always, launching brand new games is a challenge. Launching brand new games that are smaller, we really need to focus on the audience of one, if you like. So I would say, one of the biggest challenges in that area is how, traditionally we would have looked at how do we reach an audience of millions and convert a percentage of that. We now think about how do we reach an audience of one and build out from there. So it's a different way of thinking.
Different mindset, absolutely. And the talent bit kind of splintering off from some of those bigger dev studios is really interesting, because I think that's happening more and more. And even, from our perspective, we see it, great talent deciding to set up on their own or consult. And I think, over the last 12 months, that's been a really big trend in the industry, people moving away from typical kind of more corporate roles.
Yeah, and again, it's, I'm 25 years in the games industry, and, I've been corporate all my career. And I've joined BMG that went to Take-Two. I went to Eidos. I went to
which is why I said you know everybody, by the way, John.
And the step to Curve was Tencent employed 45,000 people when I was there. Curve employed 45 people when I joined. So it was the time was right in my life to engage in a different sort of challenge. And I think there's the same with a lot of people in development. That they've worked for studios that have grown to be big, and when they grow to be big, and you feel ambition and you feel you're achieving building a special business, and they get acquired, and you feel great to be part of that acquisition. But at then some point, when does your role change from the role that you really wanted it to be? And that may take a few years, but we do see sort of people leaving and setting up and saying, I just want to get back to making games. It's why I started in the industry.
Yeah, so, absolutely.
That we're seeing quite a lot.